Alright everyone, the pre-release of Diablo 4 has been out for a few days now. The official launch is coming up really soon, and now that I have finished the campaign and gotten past level 50, there's quite a bit of stuff that I have learned and quite a bit of stuff that I have wasted time on, and that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I have a list of 5 things in particular that I wish that I did not waste as much time on. These are things that you really want to be mindful of as you get to level 50 and finish the campaign that are going to be really easy to just get caught up in and waste too much time on. And starting off with number 1 here, this is why I'm at the world tier statue here, and that is wasting too much time on world tier 1 and even world tier 2. And honestly, world tier 2 is kind of deceptive because there is a massive jump from world tier 2 to world tier 3 in terms of not only difficulty necessarily, but in terms of what you get out of it. And as soon as you can end up unlocking world tier 3, you want to do this as soon as possible. You don't want to get caught stuck doing more time in world tier 1 or world tier 2, and you want to move on to world tier 3 as soon as possible, because not only is it more difficult, of course, but it gives you the potential to start getting those sacred items, and this is going to be the next tier of loot. So if you spend too much time in world tier 1 and even world tier 2, you do not have the option to end up getting these items, and that is going to prevent you from upgrading your gear and acquiring more power. So as soon as you finish the campaign, you want to look at doing the capstone dungeon. Of course, the recommended level for the capstone dungeon is 50. However, you do not have to be level 50 in order to do it. Now, I will tell you guys, I tried doing the capstone dungeon at level 40. Didn't happen. Little too early. I then did it closer to level 50, and it was much easier. I would say probably as you get to like level 45 to 48, you can start looking at doing it. Any earlier is probably going to be a little too low, but you don't have to be level 50, and as soon as you can end up completing that and moving on to world tier 3, you want to do that. Very important. Alright, next up on the list here, and this is actually something that I recently ended up doing, and that is getting certain points of renown done. And I'm going to talk about that because there's also such a thing as overdoing your renown at this point in the game, and that's something that a lot of people are doing. So if you take a look, all of my areas now specifically have all of my Lilith statues done, and I have all of my explorers done. What I do not have done at this point is I do not have the side quests, and I do not have the dungeons. And this is something that I might get into in a little bit more in another video. And the reason why is obviously the dungeons and the side quests is going to take a whole lot of extra time, but just getting the Lilith statues and the explorers doesn't really take too long. I actually managed to do all of the zones in just a few hours. And what that's going to do is for each of the zones, that is going to unlock 3 out of the 5 checkpoints for your rewards. And what that is going to get you is 2 very important things. The second and third reward, very important. The 4th reward, not as important. The 5th reward is, but this is a long ways down the road, and this is not something that you want to prioritize right now. The 3rd benchmark, though, is going to end up getting you, very importantly, the potion capacity, which is going to allow you to end up getting up to 9 potion charges, and also a skill point. So once you end up getting that potion charge and that skill point, when you get to 3 out of 5, that's kind of where you want to leave it alone for now. Eventually, you will end up getting the 4th and the 5th reward for your renown, but that's going to be a ways down the road, and there's plenty of other stuff to do now. So as long as you end up getting 3 out of 5, and you should be able to do that with just the Lilith statues and the explorers, and you end up getting that potion capacity and that skill point, you should be good to go. So make sure you end up doing that, but don't end up overdoing it. Alright, next up on the list here is going to be upgrading gear, and specifically gear that you should not be upgrading. This is one that I fell victim to way too much before level 50. I spent way too many resources upgrading my non-sacred gear, and I would say as a general benchmark actually, don't really upgrade any of your non-sacred gear, because you're just going to end up replacing this basically right when you unlock world tier 3 and you start unlocking the ability to get sacreds. You're going to end up replacing all of your non-sacred stuff. So all of my stuff that was non-sacred, I had upgraded, I had re-rolled, and it's very deceptive here because while it looks like upgrading your gear is not really super expensive, it gets more expensive the more that you upgrade it. And also keep in mind that it's going to be costing materials, and materials are basically rares and items that you've salvaged and you've given up the ability to sell those. So basically you're giving up resources there and future gold. So even though it might not seem super expensive because of the resource cost, like it is actually more expensive than you think. And a lot of the stuff that's not sacred, you're just going to end up replacing anyway. So there's really no reason to really upgrade it. The only exception that I could say is if you're at the capstone dungeon and you can't do it for some reason and you feel like you're really close, maybe you can upgrade a couple of pieces just so you can get through it, but definitely don't get stuck in the min-maxing your gear before sacred, because it's really going to end up costing you a lot of resources that you're going to need later on for upgrading things like your sacred gear, which you're going to have for a lot longer. And that's going to move on to the next point, which is that was the actual gear upgrading at the blacksmith. But also very importantly, if we go to the occultist here, something that I also did that I wish that I didn't, which is going to cost you quite a bit of gold, is re-rolling your gear. And I'll probably get into this in more detail in another video, because re-rolling gear is a whole separate beast, but probably don't want to end up doing too much of this as well on gear that isn't sacred or higher, because you're going to end up replacing it, and all those resources that you end up spending, they're just going to end up going to waste. So you're not going to really have that gear very long. Now, something to keep in mind about re-rolling your gear is it's also very deceptive. The first cost might not seem like it's a lot, but it goes up significantly. And the way that gear re-rolling works is the first re-roll costs a certain amount, and then the next re-roll is going to cost even more, and then the next re-roll is going to cost even more, and it goes up and up. And so the more that you feel like you need to re-roll a stat on a piece of gear, the more resources that it's actually going to cost. And I would avoid doing this at all on any non-sacred gear. Again, the exception to that is if you're somehow at the capstone dungeon and you feel like you are really close but you can't do it. Maybe you can re-roll 1 or 2 items just to get that little tiny boost in power, just so that you can finish the capstone dungeon, unlock world tier 3, and start farming those sacred items. But besides that, just don't reroll any of your non-sacred gear at all, especially more than once, because this is just going to eat up all those hard-earned resources that you're going to be saving up for, and you're going to really need these quite a bit when it comes to World Tier 3, your sacreds, and gear that you're actually going to have a lot longer. Because the important thing about this whole idea of not wasting resources on this gear before level 50 and before World Tier 3 is it doesn't really take too long to get to this point, but now that you've unlocked World Tier 3, the sacred items that you actually have and the gear that you get at this point is going to last you a bit longer. It's going to be longer before you end up replacing this gear. So the resources that you put into upgrading it are going to just get a lot more value and have a lot more use, because you're going to retain this gear for a lot longer. Obviously, when you get to closer to level 70 in World Tier 4, you're going to end up replacing a lot of your sacred gear with the next tier, and that's going to last you even longer. But still, sacred items is the point where it's actually going to be worth taking a look at using these resources to actually invest in your gear. So anyway, that's about it for this video. I've already gotten into enough detail, and I'm sure there's plenty more to talk about, but I want to keep it brief, trying to keep it simple for these videos. So if you guys enjoyed, if this helped out, consider leaving a like, consider subscribing to the channel for more videos in the future, and I hope you guys enjoy your Diablo 4 gameplay experience. So take it easy, everyone. Have a good one, and until next time.